This new generation of parents is a lot more aware. Are we really overcomplicating parenting?
Yes and no. I think the generations before us, where I also hear, बच्चे तो अपने आप ही पल जाते हैं, बच्चे अपने आप नहीं पलते हैं. Mistakes are inevitable. There is some research. We are really looking at attunement between parent and child 30% of the time. That means 2/3 of the time you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
That quality of attention you're not going to get from your husband, from anybody in the world. Babies are communicating from the moment they are born. If a baby is being bottle fed, with their eyes, babies often smile. They're smiling at you.
So Nupur, talking about screens.
It is such a hot topic.
It is. How did we get here? Where a child is eating with a phone,
That's a really good question. I've never thought about it like that. How did we get here?
when the child is growing up, right? And they're asking for attention either when they're crying or, you have to pick them up. A lot of elders say that, don't do this. Usko aadat pad jayegi. Even if that happens, is it a bad thing? Hi everyone, my name is Oshin Agarwal and I'm the co-founder of Sitaara. Ever since I became a mother early last year, I've been struggling to find answers to a lot of questions. Questions related to my child and their behavior, questions related to me as a parent, and questions related to the overall understanding of parenting in general. I wanted to look for answers, so I started reading a lot of parenting books. I even spoke to a lot of parenting experts, only to understand that the answers were simple enough. The challenging bit was getting to the right answers at the right time. So Sitaara is our honest effort to bring all those answers to fellow parents, simplify their parenthood journey, and bring back the joy in parenting. We have an incredible lineup of experts who've been working in the early childhood development space for many, many years. And with this podcast, we bring them all to you to answer some of the most common questions and concerns of parents of today. Do subscribe so that you don't miss out on content. In conversation today with us, we have Nupur Paiva, and we can't wait to dive into the whole world of parenting with her. Hi Nupur, thank you so much for having, coming on the show. So thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much, Oshin. This is very exciting, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation.
Awesome. Okay, so Nupur, before we actually jump into the whole parenting world, we would love to know more about you. What do you do? What's your journey, and how did you get there?
So in terms of technicalities, my titles are Chartered Clinical Psychologist, Child Psychotherapist, Child and Adolescent Psychotherapist, and I also work with adults, but that's not what I'm here for today. And so what I do on a day-to-day basis is that I have long, deep conversations with people of all ages, starting from young children around the age of, say, maybe 2-3 upwards, all the way to adults. Yeah. I run a child and adolescent mental health team in New Delhi, and which is called Family Tree, where we specialize in working with children, adolescents, and families. Yes.
Yeah. How long has it been for you running this clinic?
Family Tree started in 2018, but the journey up till then, of course, has taken, I would say, maybe 20 years before that. So I studied in Lady Shri Ram College. I studied psychology in Delhi University. After that, I went to the UK. I studied some more. I worked for the National Health Service in the UK for 10 years. And then when my own children were really young, we moved back to live in Delhi. And I used to run the counseling center at Ambedkar University for a while. And after that, I decided to move into private practice full time.
Okay. So you always knew that you wanted to be a psychologist?
I think that is more or less correct. When I took psychology as a subject in class 11, I was hooked. And before that, I didn't have any idea, of course. I was, 15, 16 years old. But yes, I was hooked. There was a period in between about age 18, where I wanted to study design, but NID didn't take me. So I was like, okay, hell with that. And then I continued to study psychology after that, yes.
Awesome. And how did working with children and families come into play, right? Like, how did you choose that this was your specialization or calling?
In the UK, I started. My first job was actually with children in a school, and I really enjoyed that. And in some of the training involves a certain number of hours with every age group, with every population. And the work with children was just the most exciting. It had the greatest sort of scope for creativity. I got to sit on the floor and play, use musical instruments, improvise, use stories, and it was just so much fun. But as I've been doing this now for all these years, I also realize that I've stuck to it because it is in a way a little niche, but it's also a very under-resourced area. We, especially in India, we tend to look at childhood from very like external markers. So we see development from a cognitive and physical perspective. So we're looking at children's growth or weight or height or what they're able to do, but their internal worlds are very under attended to. So Family Tree actually doesn't do any assessments. We don't do testing. We don't write reports. We only work with children with around emotions and relationships. So we've just found over the years that working with children, it's longer getting there, but if we intervene with situations earlier, it doesn't become a crisis later on. The other thing that has really kept me going in this area is, in a way, it's a sort of political act, because working with adolescents is where my greatest excitement is, because I think that this generation, which is now 14, 15, 16, in 20 years' time is the generation that's going to be taking important decisions. And if they have been attended to at this stage, in order to understand their internal diversity, like what goes on inside of them in terms of mixed feelings, and not be encouraged to split the world into good and bad. That means both inside themselves as well as on the outside. I think that the kind of impact that this generation will have 20 years from now is going to be substantial. So I'm actually interested in working with this age group much more than the people who are now maybe in their 50s.
Understood. No, that's very interesting, Nupur. And, just going a little back to what you said earlier about understanding of childhood and growth in Indian context, right? So when we say, I mean, there's a lot of buzz around early childhood development right now. And, how the first 5 years of a child is really important for their growth, especially their brain growth, right? But when it actually comes to us parents understanding of, what this growth is, it's restrictive to the physical and cognitive aspects, right? Like it's all about, has the child started talking, sitting, walking? So all physical milestones is what, all parents are excited about. So what is, and this actually happens within the 0 to 2 years time frame, right? So what beyond this makes for those 5 years in total that's, really important for their development?
Okay. I just want to slow down this and put it in context a little bit. See, as a country, we have had globally one of the highest infant mortality rates, okay, and maternal mortality rates. So in the generation before ours, And I think even now, in many parts of the country, there is no guarantee that the child is going to reach age 5. So we must understand that the socio-economic historical context that we come from is one where the baby's physical health actually has been paramount. We can get into all of this sophisticated stuff once the baby is alive, right? And for many decades, post-independence, we've not actually had that luxury. So this is, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and therefore sophistication, we're like leveling up. Okay, so this is a good thing. And so 0 to 2, yes, actually the physical aspects are extremely important. And I would put it in 3 sort of words. One is safety. That includes physical safety and emotional safety, because all attachment is based in physical proximity to a consistent, reliable, safe caregiver. So one is safety. The other is attention, as in age-appropriate attention, which includes stimulation. So what kind of stimulation does a baby need, a baby's growing brain need, at what time? And the third, along with attention, actually, I put love, because love is the quality of attention we give. So there's safety, there's love, and the third is boundaries, which is about the structure, the routine which we provide. Now, I've separated it out, but actually it all comes together on a daily basis. This forms the bedrock of absolutely anything that you're going to be doing, providing, expecting, building above this. Without this wired into the nervous system of each one of us, the levels above are wobbly. Okay. So there is a book that I refer to quite often. It's called Why Love Matters. And it's really literally, the tagline is, or the second line is, how affection shapes a baby's brain. So I don't think that it is entirely fair to say that it is either or. Nothing in the world, in the psychological, emotional development world, is either or. It's very complex, intertwined. So when we say affection shapes the baby's brain, we're talking about touch, safety, love, eye contact, attention, as things that are creating neural structures. And that in the absence of this, those neural structures, which all of us are born with potential to grow into something, will atrophy and no longer there's like a time period during which they are ready to fire, kind of thing. So you see, human babies are the most underdeveloped of all the mammals. It's because majority of the development takes place after birth, and the reason for this is that there is human variability in terms of adaptation. We can adapt to practically every environment on the planet, right? So you have babies growing up, born in Alaska in sub-zero temperatures, and you have babies born on the Solomon Islands. And these two babies are going to learn very different things. And they're going to have different, like, baseline temperature management. One is going to learn to swim before they can walk. The other is going to learn 20 words for snow. Because the environment shapes the baby's brain. So having this early sort of physical environment impact is being woven into the nervous system. Okay. Now, when all goes well, we actually take it for granted because we don't really notice anything amiss. We learn the most from when things have gone drastically wrong, or there has been a drastic amount of deprivation in a baby's life, and that's when we begin to understand how nuanced all of this really is. Okay, so if physicality is really important, then we're talking about early feeding, which is really important. Then the quality of that feeding, because it's not as simple as you stick a plastic bottle into a baby's mouth, food goes in, job done. No. Even baby monkeys would prefer the figure that was covered with fur because it's softer and it provides comfort, right? So this is Harlow's experiment from many decades ago, that the connection is not just about food, so it's not mechanical. And that's where, again, affection and love comes in, right? So in the first year, certainly, it's not amiss that we are looking at physical growth, but it is a quality of care that determines that physical growth, the quality of attention that is given to a child. And I did say boundaries there, which means that there is a need for a structure within which the child has some amount of room for exploration. So even an 8-month-old wants to explore their environment. They're intensely curious. They want to start crawling. And how do we provide for that age-appropriate stimulation? So in terms of milestones, the baby is crawling. But that crawling will cease if the baby meets too many impediments. Right? So there is the capacity, which is the physical milestone, and then there is the quality of what the environment provides. And these two really go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, Nupur. Also because, I've been talking to a lot of parents, and I think this new generation of parents, that's coming up now, is a lot more aware, and they want to do a lot of these things. But there's this general sentiment that I can share from my own experience, and I'm sure like I can resonate with other parents as well, that we are being challenged in a way to say that you guys are taking too much stress. It's just a baby. It will like learn how to do everything together. From our own parents, our grandparents, we've been just getting we also have raised children. It's not that hard. So are we really overcomplicating parenting, right? Is what is happening here? Because from what I understand from you, you said that environment is it matters, and parents have to take care of certain things, and I don't think we know it in that much clarity, but I think this is what we are inching towards. But this there's this whole contradiction, this general sentiment, so I just wanted to understand more from you.
Are we overcomplicating parenthood? Yes and no. No, because it is complicated. No, because there is no one size fits all. And I think that's really, really important. I think the generations before us, where I also hear, बच्चे तो अपने आप ही पल जाते हैं, बच्चे अपने आप नहीं पलते हैं. और हमारे शहरों में आजकल, हमारे देश में तो पौधे भी अपने आप नहीं उगते हैं, बच्चे अपने आप नहीं पलते हैं. Anybody who has grown a plant that then gives fruit will know कि वो अपने आप नहीं उगा है. Because you're interested in quality also, right? तो आप किस तरीके का बच्चा पैदा करना चाहते हैं और इस दुनिया में किस तरीके उसकी परवरिश आप किस उस प्रकार करेंगे जैसे आप उसका रिजल्ट चाहते हैं, right? So no, we are not overcomplicating it because it is complicated. There is no one size fits all, which means every family with a firstborn child is running a fresh experiment. So every firstborn is an experiment to their parents. The same parents, when they have their third child, are in a completely different place. The third child is not experienced as we are complicating this. It's the first one. And because there is no one size fits all, we are often saying to parents, please look at the child you have in front of you and not a fantasy child. Not mera bachcha ye banega, not I always dreamt that. I mean, great if it matches, but please look at the child you have in front of you in reality. Okay, their particular strengths, challenges, personality traits, etc. So it is complicated because it requires attention. Are we overcomplicating it? Yes, when we get anxious. Anxiety, on the other hand, as parents, is a given because from the moment the baby is conceived of in the mind, never mind in the womb, in the mind, anxiety starts because there is a lot of uncertainty. Is the baby going to be conceived easily, naturally? Does it going to require intervention? Then anxiety about the baby's health, the mother's health, checkup, etc., etc. And again, those are not overblown anxieties. These are matters of life and death. And I am not being melodramatic when I say death, because there are still maternal deaths of a large number during childbirth. So this is a very fraught area. And so are we overcomplicating it? No. Are we overcomplicating it? Yes, because anxiety makes us extremely tense and on edge. And then we have a desire to control things. That becomes overcomplicating it, because we're trying to actually control things that we don't have in our control, such as your baby's reactions, your child's reactions, their likes and dislikes, maybe even their behavior. Actually, we do not have control over that. So, but telling a new parent to not be anxious, I mean, like, if that worked, there a lot of things would be simpler, right? Like, do people calm down just by being told to calm down?
Yeah. No, and so true about anxiety, because I think all through my experience, there's this always fear of, what's going to come next, and you have no control over it. You can be at the best of your understanding, you can take all the precautions, but still, because you hear of cases, right? You always know that there could be something bad happening. You just don't want it to happen to you. And I think I want to stress on the role of social media here, right? And I want to get your views on this. That social media, I feel like, in a way, adds a lot to this anxiety, because, I mean, it's good and bad, the kind of world it has opened for us. But I think it also pushes a lot to us that, we do not really want, but, we constantly feed ourselves. And I think that's a loop, right? So how have you seen social media play a part in, I think, both things? One is anxiety, and second, I think what you mentioned about, I can only parent my child, right? And I need to understand their behavior. I think there also, because social media has opened a world of countless, child behaviors, and, a lot of reels showing babies, some babies crawling at 10 months old, some babies, learning to say sentences at 1 year old, right? And then I'm comparing it to my child, and I'm like, oh, my child barely talks. So then again, it also adds to that anxiety. So what are your views on that?
See, you brought in social media and you're talking about it in terms of how it sets up the possibilities for comparison. But as a society, or human beings, we don't need social media to do that. We would do that before social media also. So whether it was your neighbor's child or your cousin or upstairs or unse suna hai ya TV pe dekha hai, that was always around. So now it's just got extra fuel, because now you have more data and you can compare with more people, and now you can compare with people in other countries. And so the processes are similar, which is that we are assessing and judging our children in comparison to other children. And honestly, that's just unfair, because your child is a particular limited edition unit, not reproducible in any way. That particular egg and that particular sperm that came together on that day created that combination. it's never going to happen. So this is a limited edition. I mean, you have to treat it with that level of value. So this comparison is something that we tend to fall for when we are looking away, like when our view is on the outside. But if our view is close, then we can actually mitigate quite a lot of that. Yeah. There was another part to your question.
Yeah, no, so as a parent, how do I mute or, cut out that noise and create my circle smaller and just focus on my child? How do I do that?
Well, I think there's a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is literally to be more disciplined about your social media use. See, there is no doubt at all, and the research is very clear on this, that social media access and anxiety are correlated. Now, I'm careful about the words I'm using. I'm not saying it's causing it. But I can tell you that even experimenting on myself with social media, I am more anxious if I have spent a lot of time reading stuff on the internet, on social media. The counter to anxiety is being present in the body. This is from a clinical perspective. This is the work we do clinically day in and day out. And the first thing for that is to bring your attention back to what is here and now. Your social media feed is not here and now. Okay, so to begin with addressing that, since we are talking about parents of young children, I would want to also bring to people's notice that the data on the impact of parents being on their phones, the negative impact on parents being on their phones on their children, has been established without doubt. Right? So your child is affected by your lack of engagement with them. You might be in the same room, but if your eyes are on the phone, then the impact of that on your child is already a negative one. Then there's another level of the impact on you of what you are looking at. Then that's a second level of impact on your child. And then your reaction to your child of comparison is a third level of negative impact on your child. So the short answer is reduce your phone usage. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so true, because I'm seeing that in my own house. If I am on the phone in front of my daughter, she's 18 months now, and she comes, and if she's trying to say something, of course, I mean, it happens, right? You're too busy looking in your phone. And she comes, and then she's just, start hitting the phone, and she's just be like, throw it away, right? And if I don't do it within the first or second attempt, then she loses, and, she starts throwing a tantrum, or like she gets agitated that why is my mother not listening to me. And
and I'm
yeah.
Thank you really, and I'm grateful that you are sharing your personal experience here. And I want to say that this is a child with hope. This is a child who still wants your attention. You give this another year and she will want the phone. Wow. And not you anymore.
No, we are making conscious attempts to, not use a lot of phone, but yeah, it happens.
So just before I got into the car to come here, I answered the phone call about somebody who has a 13-year-old saying that their child is on the phone all the time and they need an appointment in order to address this issue. And what people don't realize is they have fed into it. Yeah. Now, of course, 10 years ago, who knows what was happening, but we are all implicated into this whole process. The children don't just move towards digital devices unprovoked. Children's first choice is always quality human interaction. It is when they don't get quality human interaction time after time after time that they will take the next best thing.
And Nupur, that brings me to this very big concern in today's
I
time.
am just aware that I didn't answer the long question. I mean, the long answer, but that may be fine with you.
I think there's just too many questions in my mind going on as a parent that, I just want to get answers, as many
Yes.
as I can.
So this was the short answer, right, to your question about how do we reduce that anxiety?
Yeah.
Yes. The long answer is actually you have to work on yourself because the anxiety is inside of you. It is triggered by external things, but it's inside of you, and you remove one trigger, you'll find another one. So the long answer is, yeah, you need to figure out what it is that's making you so anxious.
Yeah, and there's something I read at a lot of places which says um, parenting is not about the child; it's about you, right? And it's very hard hitting. That because we always focus on the child so much that we forget to look within, or we don't even know that we have to look within.
And that's why the word on your t-shirt is very appropriate, because parenting is a verb. It's about what you do, but parenthood is about how you are being. And then that requires you to look inward.
Yeah. So Nupur, on that, like as a parent, right? What does this mean that parenting is not about the child, and that what are the things that you have to look inwards or maybe address as soon as you become a parent, or maybe just start thinking about, maybe with your partner or yourself?
See, usually it's not really possible to do. Okay, you can only do that to a limited extent before you actually become a parent, in a preemptive way, because the child, the child that you have will bring up certain emotional reactions in you, which will not come about before you have that child. So it's only in that emotional context will you have certain emotional reactions. And then you will find out those little like sore spots or triggers, as they are called now, or raw nerves that you would not have found otherwise. You might be perfectly calm at work, but you might find yourself losing it at home. Yes. And it's the same person, but something else has got set off. Right? So what it brings up in us is something that we have to be observant of. So one really useful capacity, since we're talking about looking inwards, is actually just looking to begin with. Like paying attention. Like, okay, what is happening to me? Because if you're a parent of a young child, your baby is of course all a bundle of emotions 24/7. Okay, and you're an external brain, an external nervous system that is in charge of regulating this bundle. So you have to be watchful of what's happening inside of you. Yeah. What questions to ask yourself are about how is this making me feel? And especially what about this is making me anxious, and what is it that I can attend to, and what is it that is outside of my control. Yeah, these are pretty safe questions to ask yourself.
Yeah. So on that note, Nupur, like in the last decade or so, we have seen a shift in our understanding of mental health. We are a lot more open about it. We talk about it, but what does it mean? And of course, now this new generation of people who are a lot more open to it are becoming parents. So we understand the importance of it, and we want to set the right foundation for our own children. So what does a good foundation for strong mental health for a child in the age group 0 to 5 or in their early years mean? Like, how would you define that?
All mental health starts with safety, attention, and boundaries. So when I say safety, we're talking about not having moments when, as a baby, as a child, you have to go through any kind of intense fear. where you have a reliably present, consistently available caregiver or more than one caregiver who is your attachment figure. Again, it doesn't have to be one, there can be multiple. And especially in our joint families, multiple caregivers are a norm, and they're all reliably present. What that means is that the quality of attention that is coming from them is not in doubt. And what this does for the child is create a sense of internal safety, and that this world is okay. This world is not a scary place. So when I'm interacting with this world, which in the beginning is literally the room, then the house and the people in that this is safe. And then the external world enters in small doses. So dosage is very important, and every child's dosage is different. So some children are easily overstimulated. Some children need a lot of stimulation, so they can play for hours. Other children get overwhelmed very quickly and then they need a break. How those initial doses have been experienced by the child, those early experiences form the basis of what we call mental health. Now, it's a vague word, so I want to specify what it means. It basically means being able to adapt to reality. Adapting to reality is mental health. So if your reality is one that is requires you to work hard at something, you're able to bring yourself to apply yourself to that, rather than go off in some fantasy ki nahi, I should be able to do this magically, ho jana chahiye tha, aise kyun nahi ho raha hai. So spending time in fantasy rather than being able to look at reality. Being able to have feelings that are appropriate to reality. So if there has been a loss, you're able to be sad and grieve. If somebody has hurt you, you are able to feel angry. If something has been a shock, you are able to be scared or feel shock. If you are experiencing something that is comfortable and pleasurable, that you're able to experience joy. So if the reality and your internal experience matches, that's mental health.
And in the age group that we are talking about, 0 to 5, children are not able to communicate that well, right? They might not even have the right words to express themselves. So how do they express themselves here? And how, as a parent, I should understand what they're trying to say with those limited vocabulary or, expressions?
Okay, this is a great question, because really we spend most of our lifeblood on this. I want to go back to the first thing you said and tweak it a little bit. Babies are communicating from the moment they are born. The first way they do that is with eye contact, because human babies are born with their eyes open, not like puppies, right? Yeah. So they may not have their eyes open that many hours of the day, but when they do, they are looking for other eyes, and they latch on. Babies are communicating with their cries, obviously, but they're also communicating with touch. Okay, so and babies are communicating by the turn of their head. Again, right from the first day. Okay, so we have to be, as adults who are educated and raised in an environment that has a lot of verbal material, we have to be very careful that we don't confuse communication only with words. Mothers and babies, I'm saying mothers, but I include early caregivers. Every early caregiver knows that the baby is communicating with them. They know the difference in their cries. They know This means now it's tummy ache. This means they are hungry. This means now this baby is tired. And the onlooker is like, huh? How do you know? Well, simply by paying attention. So you're nodding like you know what I'm talking about. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that nod. So babies are always communicating. It's like our receivers as adults are only tuned on to pick up one bandwidth, which is words. Okay, so as adults, we need to change our receiver settings, and then we'll be able to see that babies are communicating all the time. Okay, that's one. The other is that early communication is through tone and body and sound, etc. A child up to the age of 3, 5 even, they are all emotion. So they are just constantly just being. And that behavior, whether we like it or not, is a separate matter. That behavior is the communication. Okay? So we just have to watch, and then we know what they are communicating. We are very keen to give children words so that they can make themselves understood. But actually, it's so that it makes it easier for us to understand. Like, okay, stick a label on this. So then it'll make sense to your teacher, to mama, or to papa. But that's honestly not their job. It's the adult's job to do the deciphering, because we're the one with the bigger developed brain and prefrontal cortex. Thank you. I mean, I have my toys here, which I wanted to share a story with you. Okay. So I will do this here. So this is a child who I was meeting a couple of days ago, and not at work.
Okay.
And
how old is the child?
4.
4.
And they had to go to school, and they were very grumpy about it.
Okay.
Okay. Because they were made to wake up earlier than their usual time because of some transport issue.
Okay.
So they were sitting there and they were super grumpy and refusing to eat anything. With great difficulty had changed their clothes, and now they were just unhappy. You could see it on their face. And the mom was really working very hard and was being extremely patient, trying to say, thoda sa kha lo, because otherwise you're going to have a pretty hard day till you have tiffin time or whatever. And this baby was not having any of it. Okay. Now, I was, so the mom was having some tea, and just to give her a break, I pulled out some toys that were there in my house, and I said, and I just started telling this little one a story, which was that, oh, look, this is Mummy Pig and this is Baby Pig, and Baby Pig was sleeping, and Mummy Pig came and said, oh, come on, get up, little one, we have to go to school. And Baby Pig was not ready to wake up, and then instead of Baby Pig, what woke up was a dinosaur. And the dinosaur was really grouchy and grumpy, and Mama Pig was like, oh no, where's my sweet Baby Pig gone? And she was like, okay, I know how this works. If you eat something, then you will no longer be so dinosaur. But dinosaurs only know 2 words. One is no, the other is that's it. So Mummy was like, will you eat a banana? No. Can I do this something? Okay, have a toast. Just have a toast with butter. No. And then it went on like that. Now, in all of this, Mummy is sitting there and actually trying to make the baby eat toast. And the baby is like... So again, there is no mystery about the communication. She's communicating. Yeah. Which is that she's not happy about this. Okay. Now, the point of my story is not to make this child change their mind or change their mood. I am communicating that I get what's happening with you. That's all. Okay. So this took about, so the story continued. I said, do dinosaurs eat bananas? And then she smiled. No. And then I said, do something else. And then she said, monkeys. I said, what? Dinosaur eats monkey? She said, no, banana. Okay. So now we had an extra, like some more interaction. And that got a smile. So we're like, okay, maybe mood is changing. Toast is still not being eaten. Okay. And then, meanwhile, Mummy Pig is still like, I know that you really didn't want to wake up just now, but actually my baby pig is a very sweet little piggy, and so I know that this dinosaur is just like a short-term thing. And then there was something about the class teacher, and is the class teacher a dinosaur? No, she's a frog. Okay. Then, and then something about jumping like a frog. And then the story sort of evolved from then on. And a couple of minutes later, they had to go back to school. They had to go to school. And then she was smiling and waving at me. Only half a toast had been eaten. But the mood had changed. Okay. Now, what have I done?
Is it something that is I don't know, was it like the story in a way, that indirect way you try to showcase, what they are doing? Okay.
Right?
And just calming yourself also, like not losing your own temper.
Yes. Right? Now, her mother was similar. She was very calm. She was not losing her temper at all. And she was being really sweet and loving. But this child was super not happy about this whole thing. Yeah. Right? So again, coming back to your communication question, where is the mystery in this? So are we confusing communication with changing behavior? Are we trying to say, I mean, I'm just wondering, when we say how to communicate with a child, is that we don't, their communication or their behavior or their emotions are inconvenient? Because, school jana hai. Now, if I have to take a grumpy child to school, it's going to be unpleasant. There'll be some screaming, some yelling. There'll be an unhappy child. Then there'll be some pulling and tugging at the gate. Nobody wants that. It's very distressing, right? So what's our aim? Is the aim that toast andar jana chahiye? Right? So I think we have to be very clear about what are we trying to get at in this kind of situation when we say we don't understand what's going on. Yes, if you have a 6-month-old who's crying, there are few situations that are as distressing as that, because with a 6-month-old who's crying, you really do not know what it is. Right? And it is extremely distressing for the adult who's looking after this baby. And then what do? You test your hypotheses, right? Bhook lagi hai, doodh piyo. Potty aayi hai, check your nappy. Pet mein dard hai, whatever is the colic intervention of the generation that is given. वो भी नहीं है, अभी भी रो रहे. चलो गर्मी लग रही है, ठंड लग रही है, let's walk around a little bit. Do you need a change of scenery? Do you need somebody else to hold you? We try everything, right? Because the distress is ours, watching the baby's distress. Okay? But with a 4-year-old, it's very different. It is distressing, and most of the time we want them to just stop it, change this. We don't like it. This is very inconvenient. But all I have done is meet the baby where she's at. But I have used play as the language, not words. I've used a story. I haven't actually done anything. But something changed. Again, reality hasn't changed, right? She still had to wake up early. She's still not eaten that toast. And they still have to go to school. But the mood has changed. So, adaptation to reality.
No, and I think this makes so much sense because, in one of my conversations, a parent said that their daughter, she loved going to school. She was three and a half. And then suddenly, over a couple of days, like she was not so happy about going to school. And the parents tried probing that, what's happening? Why is she not happy about it? And they kept asking her. But obviously, she
What
didn't say
did they
anything.
ask her?
I mean, I don't know like the details, but all I got was that there was no answer. So they couldn't figure out what was wrong, because I think the way of mode of communication that they were using is what they know the best, right? Like talking. So then they didn't get an answer, right? And they were struggling because of this. But I think from what you said, just changing that mode, meeting the child where they are, and talking to them in what they know, which is play.
Yes. Yeah. So most of the time, I mean, when we work with really little ones like 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, it's we don't have to see them more than 4-5 times, because it's a language adaptation. We have moved to the language they speak, and then they are very clear. They were never confused to begin with. It's a translation problem where we are demanding a translation into a mode that they have not grown into yet. Right? See, language acquisition is a very slow and advanced skill. But communication is not. And we have to not confuse those two things.
That makes a lot of sense, Nupur. And on that, like since you're talking about child and their behavior, there's another thing that I read that said that kids usually have two kinds of personalities. One that one that their parents know of, and the other one that they probably showcase in front of others, outside.
Children have a range of behaviors.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to talk, understand that. Does that happen? And why does that happen? And is it okay for it to happen? Because as a mother, as a parent, I would be concerned if, my child is not crying, outside, but suddenly comes and cries to me, then I'm thinking whether something wrong happened, and then I'll get into that mode. So,
Okay. So this is, I'm going to start backwards. This is a tough one because parents see crying as a bad thing in children, and we're sticking to under 5 in our conversation here. I want us to reframe that and look at crying in front of you as a vote of trust. It's a compliment. It's a badge of you're my safe person. Yeah. So, children have a range of behaviors. Again, it is adaptive. So, they go to school or they go to someone else's home and they are perfectly behaved. Now, I don't know what that means. They don't make a mess, they don't throw a tantrum, they eat what they are given. Wow. And they come back home and now they are making demands and they're like, I refuse to eat this, and now I'm just wandering about dropping my, bits of sandwich all over the floor. They can take liberties. It's their home also. So it is adaptive to be able to take liberties when you're in a safe space where you know you're accepted, and it makes sense that you would be held back and inhibited. I'm calling it inhibited in a new setting or a strange setting or with new people around. Yeah. Sometimes it is a response to boundaries and clarity, and sometimes at home there are very fluid boundaries and the rules are not clear, and so the child is like, yeah, it's cool. But schools, for example, are often quite clear about their boundaries, where this lives here, this has to be put there. When the bell rings, you have to come back in from there. And when that is clear to them, children follow it. Whereas at home, there is often a lack of such clarity. And that's why I've been saying children need structure, children need boundaries. They know where, in order to know where they stand. So children will follow. The same child who follows boundaries at school is coming home and throwing a ruckus. So then we are often curious about what are your structures at home? Is there clarity about, say, bedtime or meal times, or that khana is eaten at the table? School lunch means nobody is feeding you. School lunch means nobody is sitting there with a phone letting you see a video. But ghar mein all this is happening. So how have we fed into this? They shriek a little bit and you're like, okay, just see this video and eat your lunch, right? So then what have we encouraged? We have trained them that a little bit of shrieking will lead to you getting what you want. So it is a little nuanced. We have to kind of look at what's happening exactly. But yes, children's behavior in different environments is different, and it should be, because that's adaptive. You would feel very odd if your 3-year-old was going and hugging the stranger at the bus stop.
Yeah. Yeah, so Nupur, like you said, I think the first thing that I wanted to stress on is that whole well-behaved, right? Like you said that whatever well-behaved for a child means, right? And I think connecting it with what you said about their behavior outside of their house, right? So we've spoken about school, but it happens so that when you take your child outside at a mall or at a restaurant, sometimes we see these outbursts, right? And then I think
Describe an outburst.
Outburst as in the kid suddenly maybe wanting a toy and not moving, or like playing with their food, or banging cutlery and things like that. And as a parent we get conscious that, oh, what is my child doing, right? And we try to stop that behavior. And I think in that instinct maybe we offer a phone as well, or maybe if they're not eating we offer a phone, right? So like, how as a parent should we tackle that behavior when that behavior that is outside of a boundary, where I mean as a parent we want to establish a boundary.
Okay. First, I want to say that you take your under 5 to a restaurant or to a mall, you can't not expect chaos. Okay. Children are meant to be uncoordinated, messy, noisy, loud. They don't have a volume setting, or certainly they haven't discovered their own volume knob yet. And that's expected. So to expect that your under 5 is going to be regulated in this setting, we need to adjust those expectations, the adults' expectations, firstly. Secondly, sitting at a table and eating in a social setting is an acquired skill. Okay? Do they do that at home? Or is somebody feeding them at home? Do they do that at home in a social scenario where people are chatting, or are they fed separately before the family eats? In other words, what is this child's skill development? Have they been given opportunities to do this? Are they usually eating a meal with a screen in front of them? In which case now they'll be like dang, dang, drong, ding. And because eating is a very engaged activity, and cutlery is toys. So why not? So it's like, what is our concern exactly? Is it that this child is making noise? Yeah, that's expected. Okay. Are we concerned about how other people are watching? Okay. Is that a bigger concern than our child themselves? So these are kind of questions we need to ask ourselves. If it is true that other people's eyes on you is a big concern for you, then let's accept that that's a big concern for you. Then don't go there. Wait till your child is older. right? There are certain spaces that are not meant for children, right? There are many clubs, restaurants, places that say children under 16 are not allowed. What is that about? Because there are certain behaviors or manners or decorum that is required. What is decorum? It's essentially self-regulation. That you're not going to start whooping about in the middle of that. And young children are still developing that capacity. It's a long road to self-regulation, and it's unfair to expect it of them.
Yeah, I think especially when parents are traveling with the kids on a plane, I think that's very, very difficult and stressful. I think also because in a way society or the fellow passengers expect the child to not make a noise, and
Honestly, that's their problem.
yeah, it just adds a lot of stress on a parent, right? If they
It
don't
does.
separate
At
that.
the same time, anybody in that plane who has traveled with a child empathizes, right? Because it's dull to be stuck on a plane. It's takes ages. There's no room to play, and the adults are, let's face it, they're also suffering. Okay, the child is just honest about the fact that they are suffering, and you as an adult have learned to keep it shut. And okay, so if your 3-year-old is entertained for, say, a 2-hour flight with a screen, and you have to do that to keep them quiet, then go ahead and do that. Fine. If that helps the matter, then that's all right.
Yeah, and Nupur, I think that is happening a lot. I mean, when we travel, we see a lot of small children, right, under 5. The minute they sit on their seat or in the lap, the parent gives them a phone, right? And is this coming from their own maybe problem that they don't want to be perceived as somebody who can't handle their child if they're making a sound or a noise?
See, I think aeroplanes are a exception.
Okay.
Because aeroplanes are difficult. Aeroplanes are difficult for all age groups, right? Adults are also given a screen. And adults are given food, like, please entertain yourself now with your little food tray. So I wouldn't want to use an aeroplane as an example, because it's not really representative of daily life. However, the important thing there is what happens when the phone is taken away. Or is there an understanding about that the phone will be taken away? Yeah. Again, boundary, right? The giving is not the main issue, though sometimes it is. It's that is there a limit to it? Or not? Yeah. And what does the parent feel about being able to put that limit? Most of the time, we're expecting children to regulate themselves. Like, my son gets very upset when I take the phone away. Yes. If I took your phone away, you would be upset too. So they're going to have a reaction. And how are you feeling as a parent of being able to handle that?
So Nupur, talking about screens, I think...
Must we? It's
Yeah.
such a hot topic.
It is very concerning. But I think one of the common usage that I have seen, at least in my circle or conversations, is also to do with while the child is eating. Right? So how did we get here? Where a child is eating with a phone, with a...
That's a really good question. I've never thought about it like that. How did we get here?
Yeah, because I don't remember. I mean, there were not like the advent of screens and TV and all. It wasn't so much in our times. I mean, there were hardly mobile phones. Also, I think a mobile phone, and the screens were also not like so loud and graphics. So, how did this change happen?
Honestly, I'll have to think about that. I don't know how this happened. The thing is that for a baby, for a child, and certainly in our cultures, food is love. So, at which point did a third entity enter that dynamic? Is an interesting point. I have a hypothesis which we could
Sure.
look
Yeah,
at,
love to.
which is that weaning from milk, whether it is bottle fed or breastfed, see, that is a big transition for a baby. It's also a big loss. And weaning is you're weaning away from something and you're weaning onto something, right? Which means there's slowly you are reducing the dose of something and slowly you are increasing the dose of something else. And these two processes overlap. And there is some pulling and tugging about it because there is a protest. That protest has distress under it. So, distracting the baby is something that a lot of us do. And it starts with the "wo dekho chidiya ja rahi hai." So I suspect that the screen is the chidiya.
And Nupur, you also mentioned the like how parents have to restrict their phone usage, right, around kids. So does that really happen when they're toddlers, or is it something that should happen?
Oh, okay. So I have very strong feelings about this. And it goes back. So to answer your question simply, no phones around any kind of eating. That starts all the way from feeding, breastfeeding, bottle feeding. Okay. The reason for that is that that early feeding is not a mechanical act. If it was, you could take a boom like this, and instead of having a microphone at the end, you could attach a milk bottle and stick it over a baby's mouth. And it'll just drip at a specific rate and will deliver milk to the baby. You can do that. We don't do that. Because feeding is not a mechanical act, it's an extremely emotional act. So, and again, remember what I said earlier about eye contact being communication. A bottle fed baby or a breastfed baby is communicating with the mom or dad, if the baby is being bottle fed, or anybody else, with their eyes. You would know babies often smile mid feed, right? Who are they smiling at? Yes, they're smiling at you. Babies will often, if you're looking at them, they will move their mouth away from the nipple, breast or bottle, and give you a full look and go and then they'll pat the breast and then they'll go back to it. That is pure love. That quality of attention you're not going to get from your romantic partner, from your husband, from anybody in the world. That unadulterated attention of pleasure. And it is of those moments that attachment is built. It is not just that you were physically present. Because there is a difference between you and the chair, which was physically present. So at that time, if mom's attention or dad's attention is on something else, then that baby has nobody to connect with. Then what could be a beautiful act of bonding becomes a mechanical act. So what if it's coming out of your body? It is still mechanical. So, as you can see, I said that I feel very strongly about this. And then that becomes, you see, it's not an isolated thing. It's a theme of the quality of relationship. Then that tends to move into how weaning onto food takes place. So we are all quite into having children interact with their food very neatly. Okay, that's not about to happen. When a child is making a relationship with food, they want to. How are they making a relationship with food?
By touching it, smelling it.
Yes, through the
squeezing it.
senses.
Yeah.
Right? So touch is a major one, and touch means they have to do things with it. So they're going to mash it and spread it and play with it. And then there is this, don't play with your food.
In that fear that the child is not eating anything, right? सब तो गिरा दिया.
Okay, my initial response might be a little classist, which is और दे दो. Okay. Yeah, the baby is not concerned about गिरा दिया. वो वहीं से फिर उठा के भी खा सकते हैं.
True.
These are our ideas about neatness, cleanliness, etc. But if it's basically clean, then your child is just interacting with the environment. Yes, they're going to pick up the odd bug and the odd virus, but every pediatrician knows that early childhood is the time for sorting out your virus arsenal. It's inevitable. It builds immunity. In fact, having a sanitized environment is counterproductive. So, since we're talking about food, the baby has to interact with food. If you're going to make it very mechanized with a spoon, and the spoon comes, see, remember that the baby is got control over only this part of their mouth, of their entire body, to begin with. And then gradually, the control moves from mouth to neck. At 3 months, they can hold their neck. Then gradually, at 6 months, they can hold up their abdominal muscles. By 9 months, they can point. And so, control moves this way in the musculature. And so, if you are weaning your baby around 7 months, they aren't actually really ready to, not all babies, some could be grabbing and making the move to their mouth. So they're going to need some help, yes. But let them interact with it. Something for them to play with or put in their mouths, hit and miss, and something that you are putting in. When a baby is breastfeeding, they have total control over the speed of what goes in and the rate at which. So they can stop, they can start, they can look away, they can take a look around, they can come back to it. That chammach is not in their control. It's just hovering around their face like this. And how do babies communicate when they've had enough?
This, like, yeah.
Yeah.
They just don't open their mouth.
They don't open their mouths. What are you going to do?
I mean, what I should do versus what, parents do
Exactly.
are two different things.
So, how would you answer your question about where did the phone come into this? Where did the screen enter this?
Yeah. We only brought it. I mean,
in order for what? Because what function does it play?
Our entertainment, our...
It could be our entertainment because this is a very repetitive process. बच्चे को दिन में 3 बारी खिलाना है.
Yeah.
It feels like forever.
Yeah.
Yes. Caregiving is extremely repetitive.
Yeah.
And that makes it dull.
Yeah.
Yeah. But your baby and you is the entertainment.
True.
That building relationship is the entertainment.
Yeah.
But there's also the element of when children are not paying attention to the food and they are looking at a screen, they'll do food goes in.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, TV देखते देखते उसने 2 पराठे खा लिए.
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, what we're training a child to do is to not notice when they've had enough. And then we are actually training them out of noticing what their bodies are letting them know. See, a child will not deliberately keep themselves hungry unless there is some other problem going on, emotionally, physically, or in the environment. So they will, and they will also not know that they are hungry, right? Which is why food to a toddler needs to be offered every 2 hours in small bits rather than expecting them to sit down and have a full on meal. So, newborn babies' tummies are this big. Newborn babies, ping pong ball. All right. So they fill up very quickly, they empty very quickly. But even a toddler's tummy is not much bigger than that. So it fills up quickly, it empties quickly. So they're not going to be sitting about eating do chapati, dal, chawal, sabji. But they might need food every 2 hours. Also, then sitting and eating is something that is a social thing, right? We grow into it. So they're only going to gradually get there. So in all of these places where we are expecting children to do something that they're not designed for yet, I suspect the phone screen comes in. Yeah. Because then we're numbing them from what their actual need is, which might be to get up and run around or explore. And because they've had enough of sitting in one place. Some families actually use little toys. So they would have, the child would be playing like this and somebody is feeding them. That is better. Right? For many reasons. One is that they are actively involved. One of the troubles with a screen is the passive nature of that. It's not an interaction, whereas this is an interaction. There is some imagination involved. There is something going on with these that emerges from the child. In a screen, nothing emerges from the child. And actually it kills imagination. And the child can move their attention away from this to the food and back. Maybe these will also be eating the food shortly. All of that can happen. There is more room for all that. Whereas with a screen, none of that can happen.
No, I think, it's a great segue into the next question I wanted to ask was, what are some of the common mistakes, that parents make? And I think, of course, right, like you have answered a lot of it, but if there's anything else that you think you want to add here, which we've not spoken about,
See, I do want to say that I don't want this to be turning into parent bashing. I think that it's really a hard job. It is also the most important job you'll ever do. It's the one job where you are indispensable. Nobody else can do this. The quality that you will bring to it, no one else will. So the stakes are kind of high. From your paid employment, you are actually dispensable, I'm really sorry to say. They can replace you. To your child, you're irreplaceable. Okay, so at the same time, mistakes are inevitable. We're not looking for perfection. We are looking for good enough. There is some research, which honestly I haven't read, but this is hearsay, that we are really looking at attunement between parent and child 30% of the time. That's 1/3. That means 2/3 of the time you can make mistakes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That gives you a lot of room.
It gives you a lot of room.
Yeah.
The strength of the relationship is not based on not making mistakes. It's based on how quickly you can realign. So we've all got anxious, we've all lost it with our kids, we've all yelled at them, smacked them even, been inattentive when they needed something, been on the phone, not paying attention when they were asking for attention. Name it. And I think I'm the oldest person in this room, which means I have made more mistakes than all of you, just simply by having lived longer and having older children. So that's inevitable. But how quickly do you make amends is the key to your future with each other. Okay, so common mistakes. Number one, relating to a fantasy child rather than the child you have, which could range anywhere from expecting that your girl child will want to wear a frilly pink dress, to ideas about how they should anything. So the moment you hear a voice in your head that says should XYZ, you are in major mistake zone. So you have to check with what is the reality. Who is this particular child that you have, their temperament, and does this should apply? Yeah, so that's mistake number one. It also puts the parents through a lot of pain to constantly be at the receiving end of a bunch of shoulds. So the second, which is really like point B of part one,
Yeah.
is comparing,
Okay.
right, to others. Whether it's their behavior or it's their habits or whatever. Common mistake number two is when parents are like, oh, they're just doing this for attention. My answer to that is yes, they are. Because without your attention, they will die. And I'm not even exaggerating, right? Babies are designed to grab the attention of adults. See, human babies are the most under-resourced mammals at birth. We literally cannot do anything. A giraffe baby can get up and walk within 6 hours to keep up with the herd, because the herd is not going to sit about, and they have to keep moving for food and safety. And you can't carry the baby. The giraffe baby has to walk, right? But human babies are very under-resourced. So without getting parental attention, human babies die. And so being able to ask for attention is very important. And the fact that your child can ask you for attention is again a badge of trust. It's a vote of confidence. It's not a bad thing. So when parents say this to us, I ask them, what is going on that they need your attention? And what do they want your attention for? Because obviously it nurtures them in some way. But underneath that, are you resenting them asking you for attention?
No, I have a point to make here. Like at least parents hear that often when the child is growing up, right? And they're asking for attention, either when they're crying or, you have to pick them up. A lot of elders say that, don't do this. The child will get used to it. Usko aadat pad jayegi. Right? And then the parent, obviously, because they think that's how it should be, and obviously you don't want your child to be just like coming after you all the time. So you're like, okay, yeah, maybe this is right. Then they restrict themselves from being there all the time. So like, how does that, is it true that, okay, then the kid will get used to it? Or even if that happens, like, is it a bad thing?
See, that's such a great question. Is it a bad thing that they're used to you? Why would you not want them used to you? See, there are nuances to it. Are we responding to the child's need, or are we responding to our own need? And this takes some time to tell the difference. So, because in the beginning it's very intertwined and it's not really possible to pull it apart, which is fine. But say you have a 2-year-old and the 2-year-old is able to climb onto something, like a small stool or something. And they are like, "Pah, pah, 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 pah. Do it for me. Put me on this. They're asking you for your attention, or they're asking you to put them on that stool. Like, which is it? Do they require your presence and encouragement as support to, come on, let's try it together. Yes, put your foot here, put your foot there. You're still present. You're helping them to do it themselves. Eventually, by the next 6 months, they'll be fine. They'll be doing it themselves. Or are we talking about a 7-month-old in a crib who's just barely learning to stand up? Right? They start yelling for your attention. What is that about? If a 7-month-old is yelling for your attention, you want to find out what they're yelling for your attention for, right? So you really have to run it past your own, the particular child you have, rather than isko mat uthao. Okay, because at the end of the day, you're the expert on your relationship with your child. You know this baby better than auntie and nani, dadi even, maybe. Right? So you have to check with yourself about responding. So the baby needs to be picked up. Pick them up. The baby needs to be entertained, carried around because they need some stimulation. Sure. How wonderful that they can turn to you as a, she's there. She's always there. That actually fills up a child with trust and safety. They can take that into the outside world. So it doesn't work on deprivation. Deprivation does not lead to better internal resources in the early years. Yes, there is a time from when on we, in small doses, frustrations are natural, right? Weaning will take place. Whether you feed your baby for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, at some point you will wean the baby. Then the baby will start going, say, to play school. There will be frustrations. They are inevitable. How then we support our baby to handle frustrations in the real world is actually dependent on what a solid cushion they had to begin with. Not that, oh, because it's going to be hard outside, let me make it hard for you inside also.
True. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think parents today, I think I can speak for myself also, that we're trying a lot to understand a lot of these things. We are reading a lot, we are more aware. But somewhere I think a lot of these, I don't know, inhibitions, insecurities, I don't know what it is, but it also restricts us from accepting a lot of these things, right? So in your experience, what are some of the things that parents are still finding very challenging to accept?
Okay, so I wrote a book about it. So clearly there's many. The biggest one being that the parents, are actually very crucial to their child. Like, you as a parent, you matter the world to your baby. Okay, so I want to link this to something you'd said earlier about looking inward, right? So the kind of childhood you had actually affects your baby as well, because it comes through us unknowingly. So no matter how much we read, and no matter how much we think and how much we research, there are our lived experience as children, our lived experience in our own families is going to come through. How filtered it is, how unfiltered it is, can be determined by some reflection, introspection, thought process. but it's inevitable. I think sometimes parents are a little not looking at those connections. It could be hard to accept as well. There is a chapter which is actually at the end of the book, which is called Children and Emotions Lesson 101. And it begins with a quote from The Little Prince, which says, "Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves. And it is rather tedious for children to have to explain things to them time and again. I have spent a lot of time with grown-ups. I have seen them at very close quarters, which I am afraid has not greatly enhanced my opinion of them." So, since we're talking about babies to 5, right, this would apply more or less at different levels, even within the 0 to 5. Myth number 1, children have no worries. Okay. In truth, children are anxious. They may be extremely anxious or less anxious, then that depends on their temperament and on their specific environment and how the environment has responded to them from birth onwards. How they display their anxiety also varies, because as we grow, we learn to build what are called defenses against anxiety. So this is one of the things that I think parents are often shaming children about, which is, what do you have to worry about? Well, they have their own child-size worries. They are not, okay, your tax returns are due, and they are not, oh, I have to figure out, I don't know, mutual funds or capital gains. And okay, I don't have to, my worries are not about paying bills or about managing my relationship at work with my boss, but they are my child-size worries. For a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old going to nursery, a big worry is, will I be able to use the toilet? It's a big worry. A big worry for a baby who's going to daycare or to nursery is, am I going to live here forever? Do I have to sleep here at night? They can't verbalize it like this. But the fear is that तुम मुझे यहाँ पे छोड़ दोगे और मुझे यहाँ भूल जाओगे. That's a child-size worry. Okay, but as you can see, it's giant. Yeah. Rational, irrational has nothing to do with this. It's about safety, love and attention. Okay, so right, myth number 2 that parents find hard to accept. The myth is that children don't really know what's going on. They are involved in their own worlds. This comes up quite a lot when there have been life events, like events in the family, and the child's behavior has changed. Now, sometimes parents are actually quite aware of the connection, such as moving from a joint family to a nuclear home. Even to a 3-year-old, okay, children know what's going on. They may not know the intricacies of who's not getting along with whom and what Batwara was done and why we moved and all of that. They're not interested in that. They know they have lost people. Okay? And they have a reaction to what's going on. They are not zapped out in their own world. We would like them to be, because then we don't have to deal with their emotional reaction. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Myth number 3. Everyone goes through it, so it's no big deal. Right? So when we hear it saying, oh, it's normal. This happens to everyone. Whether it's about going to school for the first time or class 10 board exams. Everybody does it. So, does that mean, but I'm doing it for the first time, no? And this is monumental for me. So, just because everybody does it means it's no big deal.
It almost feels like invalidating what they're feeling.
Okay. Myth number 4, if you ignore it, it will go away. So this only works with like bugs. You know, you ignore the spider, it will go away. It does not work with children's feelings. It does not work with children's reactions. There is a caveat there. if your child is using abusive, bad language, abuses the F word, the S word, the B word, the M word, because they've picked it up from wherever, if you react, it will ensure it will stay. So the only place when you want to, because they don't know what it means, they just know people react. And people react like fireworks have gone off under their chair. So if a 3-year-old says the F word, you just behave like nothing happened. If you tell them off, or you laugh, or you look disapproving, all of that is a reaction. The only thing that works is to pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah. Is that a myth, or does that happen?
No, so that's what I said. Ignore it and it will go away.
Yeah.
Does not work with anything else except this
Got it.
and spiders.
Okay. Yeah. Any other example also that you can give for something which is, if you ignore it, it won't go?
Oh, if you ignore it, it won't go? Yeah. So, ignoring feelings teaches your child that you don't particularly care for his feelings. You just care for his actions or his compliance. This only ensures that feelings will reappear in a form that is harder to link to its source or origins. In other words, the child will use a coping strategy in order to deal with a feeling, and the entire process will go underground. So if your child is angry and you ignore it, they might stop being angry at that point, but they've basically learnt that you are not going to pay attention to their angry feelings. Which doesn't mean the anger goes away. It means the expression of it goes away. Our feelings are like our lungs or our liver. They're just there. Like, just because your liver is not making its presence felt every moment of the day doesn't mean it's not there, right? So similarly, our feelings are physiologically, they're just there. And they're there for our information. So we can change our expression of it, but you can't turn them off. So if a child, they can stop expressing a feeling in front of you, but it will just go underground and start to exert pressure somewhere else. So when we have families with small children come to see us at our center, we explain to kids that what we do here is that we help people with their feelings, and because sometimes feelings can be very big or they can feel very scary, and sometimes they don't want to come out but they rattle around inside. They give us tummy aches or headaches, and so we help people here with their feelings so that then they are not rattling around inside. The other analogy is the pressure cooker. So if you ignore your pressure cooker, what's going to happen? Yes. Yeah, because it builds pressure, right? Our feelings inside, unattended, they build pressure.
Understood. So in that context, Nupur, like how do we as parents, right, create that safe environment at home for our kids to grow up, in a better way, both emotionally and mentally? So
I think that's a lovely question. I mean, really what we want to do is to be present with affection.
yeah, so simple. What's so overlooked?
Because it's really hard in trying to do many things, right? Like, there's a lot of pressure on the adults who are also trying to raise children. In the world that demands, the world that, this, how do we create an environment which is good for their emotional and physical development, actually is at odds with what your life outside demands of you. It shouldn't be, but because your life outside you may not have may not have much control over. Um, to put it very simply, that's because capitalism and raising children are at opposite ends.
Yeah.
They demand opposite things. So you can't do both equally well. So because demands on your time, on your energy, on your patience is going to eat into the loving attention you can give to your children. Right? Now, when I say loving attention, I mean an openness for whatever is emerging. Grumpy baby because she had to wake up early to go to school. This mom was very accepting that, yes, of course you're going to be grumpy. Yeah, well, let's like see how we can make it better. Maybe if you eat some toast, you will feel better. But she was coming with loving attention. If there's sadness, if there's anger, if there is so that the child feels like in this home, I can just be myself. Yes, there are rules and yes, there are structures. And at 7 o'clock, we have to start preparing to go to bed. And no, you can't do that. And no, you can't do that. But it's all done in a loving, attentive way. Yeah, I think we do confuse, but I do want to say that this modern you are overcomplicating parenting thing often ends up meaning that boundaries are been thrown out of the window. So we are not saying please be permissive. Loving and attentive does not mean permissive. Ki kuch bhi chalega. Loving and attentive means you have to be the parent your child needs, which means you have to control the dosage of what's coming into them in their lives, whether it's the screen or it's play or it's what kinds of foods, too much sugar, too much junk versus healthy food that is still tasty. How much are you giving your child room for making choices or just like being independent? How much are they involved in the household, like tidy up or put things away or take out the kuda or put these chappals back? How much are they involved in part of that? All of these are ways of being a parent and being loving and attentive with structures. I mean, after all, as the adult, you're in charge.
Yeah. And I think that's what you've really summed up conscious parenting in a very beautiful way, because I think it gets a lot of, I won't say hate, but yeah, like a lot of questions about what it actually is. And it gets mistaken for something that, the child becomes the boss of you. But I think how you mentioned...
I think this is really... the child does not want to be the boss. It's very scary to be the boss. Anyone who has run a startup, runs a business, knows that it's a lot of responsibility. Yes, one of the things that is so freaky about being a parent is that you are the one in charge. Do you enjoy it all the time? No, because it raises your anxiety. It raises children's anxiety. They don't want to be in charge. It's wonderful to be told, okay, that's it. You may not like it, but it's a relief. It feels like there is a safety net, right? So a 2-year-old will challenge you and be like, no, I don't want that. No, I don't like this. That is not an invitation for you to roll over and give up. You continue to be the loving, attentive parent who says no.
And I think that's what like conscious parenting is, right? Like the parent making conscious efforts to not break the structures or boundaries, right? So it's, if anything, it's actually a lot of hard work. And
it is hard work, because you see, the word you used was conscious. And what I said earlier was about our lived experience comes through us unconsciously, like automatically outside of our awareness. So to pause and be like, whoa, wait, what am I doing? It takes effort to do that rather than just living automatically. And that's where all the research, the reading, can actually, and the introspection actually helps.
Yeah.
So that's the part where, no, we are not overcomplicating it. It is complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, Nupur, we could really go on here because, as a parent, there are just too many questions that I would love the answers
and
for.
I have 20 years worth to be blabbering in 1 hour.
Yeah, but no, gladly we've just started this collaboration, so there's just so much more to come. But in interest of time for this particular conversation, there's just one last thing that I would love for you to answer. That this whole world that we're living in, right? I mean, call it social media, because of social media, or the older generations, right? There's just so much that parents are made to believe, or double guess themselves, that we're constantly thinking, are we doing it all wrong? So, and it happens with me also, right? I'll watch some reel which says, oh, don't do this to your child, and the other reel would say that do this to your child, right? And I'm just like fighting, understanding, okay, what is it that I do to my child, right? So, I mean, if I were to ask you that, what would be your one Sitaara advice, or suggestion or guidance for parents, what would that be? And here I'm actually categorizing parents in 3 different groups. One is parents of a newborn, for between 0 to 12 months, parents of a toddler, which is 1 to 3 years, and parents for a child who's just started going to school, in the age group of 3 to 5. So what is their guiding star to not lose their minds?
Yeah. These are real heavy duty questions.
Yeah. Simplify it for us.
When you spoke about, one reel says this, one reel says that, it reminded me of a book that's from the 50s, the 1950s. And it's called Child, Family and Outside World, and it's a book that we use in our work a lot. But in that, the author, who is a child psychiatrist, was a child psychiatrist in the UK for about 40 years, writes about the first time mother being at the receiving end of so much advice. The nurse is saying something, your mother is saying something, your mother-in-law is saying something, the neighbor is saying something, all well-intentioned, right? But it's confusing you. So when you said that about reels, I was like, this is just the 2024 version of that, which was the 1940s. Right. So, and his advice is, if the mother can bear her own anxiety, and when I say mother, I mean mother supported by father, because this is a joint effort. Huh? Yeah.
Glad you said that.
Yes. It's layers. And it's concentric circles. And they're very important. So if the mother-father is a unit, can bear the anxiety of this uncertainty, this not knowing, this new place that they're in with their firstborn, newborn, then actually whatever they provide to their baby will be good enough. Notice I said good enough. Which means the graph is not even. There'll be some ups, there'll be some downs, but it's in the range of good enough. So the most important thing for the Sitaara advice for the parents of newborns is to not freak out. Because when you are not freaking out, you can listen to your emotional response to your baby. Remember, the mother, the father have just been born as well. So they are newborn parents. And so this is a very high pressure situation. Okay. But out of the 3 of you, the adults have history of capacity when you do not freak out, you have all of that can kick in. When we freak out, then our nervous system short circuits, and then all our existing faculties are unavailable to us. So, if you can stay calm and allow yourself to listen to yourself and keep out the noise, then you will be good enough. Okay. This, of course, is when you already have the pediatrician, the etc. Your baby is healthy. Your baby is born with all fingers and toes intact, and you are healthy as well. If there are major health complications, then that's a different matter altogether, because then levels of anxiety are very high, right? But there is a thing which is that the early mother, father, baby unit are actually designed to be a cocoon. Cocoon. And if you can delegate outside world things to outside other people who are all well-meaning and wanting to help, right? Somebody else can buy the groceries. Somebody else can take care of the bills. Somebody else can talk to the landlord. Somebody else can whatever. And you can be cocooned, then your response to your baby will be good enough. But if you have to do all that also, then it's very hard.
So it's in a way like all the help that a new parent needs with the child is not with the child. It's about the other things that can be outsourced.
Yeah, because you can't outsource that. I mean, we think we can. We try.
And moving on to the toddler parents, where the trouble
Right.
starts.
Toddler parents. Toddlers are such fun. Okay, I have to think this through. 1 to 3.
Where you have the mischievous, terrible twos, or
Yes.
you hear that a lot.
Yes.
So
So your 1 to 3-year-old is just like sparks are flying out of their head on a daily basis. Like everything is new. They can now move. They can now pick up things. They can now make sounds. This is just so exciting
yeah,
for them.
yeah,
For you, it can be exhausting.
yeah.
I can't pick one.
Give us one, Nupur. We need
I
it.
want to say make time for it
Okay.
and enjoy this interaction.
Yeah.
You will always be playing catch up.
Hmm.
Your 1-year-old and your 3-year-old are going. Even just those 2 years, the baby changes so much.
Yeah.
Expect to be zapped a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Wear your seatbelt. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And
When I say you'll always be playing catch up, like you think you figured out your kid,
yeah, they change.
and next month they're different.
Yeah.
So they like this food, now they don't want to look at it even.
Yeah.
I remember my 2-year-old going through this phase where she only wanted to eat white foods.
White. Okay.
White.
Yeah.
So gobi,
Huh.
pasta,
Huh.
white rice,
Yeah.
milk,
Yeah.
dahi.
Yeah.
What else is white?
Yeah. And how did you figure that out though?
Observation.
Trial. Okay.
Yeah. Everything else was being tossed.
Yeah.
So it had to just be very plain, basically.
Got it.
Yeah. So there was just this whole plain phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it changed. So
You put in the effort to figure it out and
yes.
change the rules.
Yes. And then they changed the rules.
Yeah.
Yes. So you'll always be playing catch up.
And we think kids don't understand anything. They're so smart. Yeah. And got it. And for
This was a hard one.
yeah.
For the 3 to 5s.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a little easier
Hmm.
because I thought about it.
Okay.
So these dolls are very basic.
These
piece
are
of-
Russian dolls?
Yes, bought in Delhi Haat though. A very essential piece of equipment in my center, in my
Yeah.
clinic, which is that inside every 5-year-old is a 4-year-old. Inside
Okay.
every 4-year-old is a 3-year-old.
Hmm.
Inside every 3-year-old is a
Just-
little one.
Got it.
Okay. So your 5-year-old is not operating at age 5
Hmm.
all the time.
Yeah.
You send your 5-year-old to kindergarten. The one who comes back is not 5.
Hmm.
What you get back is 2.
Yeah.
So the 2-year-old is tired and hungry and overstimulated and hot and sweaty.
Hmm.
What are you expecting? Hi mom, I had such a great day.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You're going to get cranky,
Yeah.
grumpy, refuses to eat lunch, and probably shrieking.
Hmm. Hmm.
5-year-old.
So it's not the same child you send to school that comes back.
Yes, they shrunk on the way back.
Yeah.
Yes. The same one, 5 years old, very coordinated, very articulate, can read. Some 5-year-olds can read, I don't know how.
Hmm.
Anyway, they can. But then they get viral fever.
Hmm.
Then they only want to sit in your godi
Yeah.
and they want you to feed them,
Yeah.
and they will only sleep if you hold them and put them to bed.
Yeah. I think that's true for adults also.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So they just became like one.
Yeah.
Carry me.
Yeah.
So the bit of advice for parents of 5-year-olds, 3 to 5-year-olds, is that inside your 5-year-old
Hmm.
are all the previous ages.
Yeah.
So you're not dealing with 5 all the time.
Yeah.
That's the outermost of their capacity.
Yeah.
And then you,
Hmm.
mother or father, special
Yeah.
person, are going to get the privilege
Yeah.
of seeing all the little ones inside.
Wow. I mean, when you put it into context like that, it just makes so much sense.
So that's the Sitaara advice for
Yeah.
the 3 to 5s.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, Nupur. And I mean, never saw it that way, but yeah, it just like makes so much sense. It's,
I hope it stays
Yeah.
in their minds, because it really helps with the patience and
Yeah.
the, what are you expecting from them.
yeah, yeah. And just one out of curiosity, right? Like, do they also anytime, act above their age also?
Oh yeah.
So, and is
Sure.
this when they grow up? Or like,
No.
but we're very
they
surprised.
can, because they're copying
Yeah.
also. So they can put it on.
Hmm.
Yeah, sure. Or they can have that attitude for a few moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was super insightful, Nupur. So, happy to have this conversation with you. And I'm sure our viewers would have, learnt something. I'm sure meaningful additions.
Something, yes.
Yeah,
I
mean, it's always
that it is-
contextual, right?
Yes,
Like,
of
I
course.
hope that, they found it meaningful and it in some way simplifies their parenthood journey. And super excited to keep on this collaboration and, do a lot more of this in the future.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much for your time. It's great having you.
Thank you.
you.